Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa ba'd. This is lesson number 3 from the Haa'iyyah of Ibn Abi Dawood, rahimahullah. And inshallah today we're going to continue from the third line, inshallah. So he said, قال رحمه الله وكل غير مخلوق كلام مليكنا بذلك دعنا الأتقياء أفصحوا ولا تكو في القرآن بالوقف قائلا كما قال أتباع لجهم وأسجحوا ولا تقول القرآن خلق قرأته فإن كلام الله باللفظ يوضح. Alright, so in this lesson, inshallah, we're going to focus on the issue of the Jahmiyyah and them saying that the Quran is makhluk. So he said, وَقُلْ غَيْرَ مَخْلُوقٍ كَلَامُ مَلِكِنَا. So he's telling the people to say that basically that the Quran is the speech of Allah and it's غَيْرَ makhluk. Now, of course, before the Jahmiyyah came and started what they started about the Khalq al-Quran, because at first you had different stages of their. Alright, so first they came and then they just said that the Quran is makhluk, and then of course the ulama, they came out and they made takfir of them, and they said whoever says, and then we're going to go over these different narrations inshallah from Imam Ahmed and there's also other ulama. Alright, but the most famous narrations, of course, because Imam Ahmed, he was the one, he stood up and he stood against this belief with himself. I mean, he got punished for standing up against this belief. So when they said that they made takfir of the people of the Jahmiyyah that said that the Quran is makhluk. So then they started saying they tried to twist it around, and so and this is why they'll say, like, for example, what do you say about the speech of Allah? You just say kalam Allah. They would say that it's kalam Allah, but in their opinion, that the speech of Allah is makhluk, because they separate. They don't believe that the kalam, that the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a sifa. So since it's not a sifa for them, they separate it from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they make it something that stands alone as itself, that the speech is itself is created, which is a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. And this is the reason why the ulama from before, they made it a condition where the person, when he says that the Quran is the speech of Allah, the kalam Allah, that he has to say ghayra makhluk. And if he didn't say that, then they would say that he's from the Jahmiyyah, because he had to clarify. And because this is a part of our religion, is to clarify your stance. Whenever we have any types of shubahats where people are coming and trying to cause this type of division between the people, the people of knowledge, they have to be very clear about what stance they're taking. And there can't be anybody sitting on the fence in these types of issues. So the ulama, they told them, and that's why you see in this Bayt al-Shi'r, because you got to keep in mind that, number one, Ibn Abi Dawood is the son of Abu Dawood al-Sijistani. Now, Abu Dawood is the student of Imam Ahmed. Alright, so this is not like, for example, this is not like a small issue. Like, this is not like somebody like in the time of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah who was reading books about Imam Ahmed. No, this is a person whose father is a student of Imam Ahmed. You understand? So it's a whole, he's the one that wrote the poem. And if you go back to a Sharia, for the people that have the ability to read the Arabic language, if you go to a Sharia al-Ajuri, at the very end of the book, in the second to the last page, depends on the print that you have, you'll actually see the poem. And it's the third and the second and third of the last 3 pages. All right, the third and the second page of the last 3. You'll see the poem of Ibn Abi Dawood here. And he narrated it. Al-Ajuri narrated it in a Sharia. And then right when he got done narrating the poem, he said, ثُمَّ قَالَ لَنَا Abu Bakr ibn Abi Dawood, which is the Sahib an-Nadhm, the person who wrote the poem. He said, هَذَا قَوْلِي. He said, this is my code, this is my statement, this poem. Everything in this poem, هَذَا قَوْلِي. وَقَوْلُ Abi. And this is the statement of my father, which is Abu Dawood. وَقَوْلُ Ahmed ibn Hanbal. And this is the statement of Ahmed ibn Hanbal. وَقَوْلُ مَنْ أَذْرَكَنَا مِنْ أَهْلِ الْعِلْمِ. And this is the qawl, or the statement of the people that we have met from the people of knowledge. وَمَنْ لَمْ نُذْرِكْ مِمَّنْ بَلَغَنَ عَنْهُ. And even the ones that we haven't met that have reached us as far as their statements in regards to all of these issues. فَمَنْ قَالَ عَلَيْهِ غَيْرَ هَذَا فَهُوَ كَذِبٌ. فَقَدْ كَذِبٌ, sorry. And he said, and if anybody says anything other than what I said about me, like if he says that I believe anything other than what's said in this poem, then just know that he's lied. So this is not this is not like I said, this is from a person whose father he was a student of Imam Ahmed. And if you read the Sunan Abi Dawood, you will read a lot of different ahadith, especially all the ahadith that go through Abdul Razak. They're narrated to Abu Dawood, to Abu Dawood from Al-Imam Ahmad, rahimahumullah. Now, as far as the Quran being the speech of Allah and not being makhluk, I mean, we have this. It's in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَإِنْ أَحَدٌ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ اسْتَجَارَكَ فَأَجِرْهُ حَتَّى يَسْمَعَ كَلَامَ اللَّهِ. Alright, so if a person from amongst the mushrikeen istajarak, it means like they seek refuge with you, they seek safety because maybe they're fighting or something's going on, and so they're seeking safety with the Muslims. فَأَجِرْهُ, so give him protection. حَتَّى يَسْمَعَ كَلَامَ اللَّهِ, so until he can hear the speech of Allah. And here, even in the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala قال حَتَّى يَسْمَعَ كَلَامَ اللَّهِ, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He called His own speech, kalam. And this is, of course, it's talking about the Quran. It's not talking about any other speech. It's talking about here specifically حَتَّى يَسْمَعَ كَلَامَ اللَّهِ, the Quran. So he might enter into Islam. He'll listen to the truth, and he'll believe the truth, and inshallah enter into Islam. And also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَقَدْ كَانَ فَرِيقٌ مِّنْهُمْ يَسْمَعُونَ كَلَامَ اللَّهِ ثُمَّ يُحَرِّفُونَهُ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا أَقَلُوهُ. So وَكَانَ فَرِيقٌ مِّنْهُمْ, a group from amongst them, يَسْمَعُونَ كَلَامَ اللَّهِ, that they would hear the speech of Allah. So a group from amongst them, from the people of the book, from the people of Ahl al-Kitab, يَسْمَعُونَ كَلَامَ اللَّهِ ثُمَّ يُحَرِّفُونَهُ, and then they change it, they give a ta'wil, they give an understanding of the meaning that's not the meaning that was intended when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down the book. ثُمَّ يُحَرِّفُونَهُ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا أَقَلُوهُ. Alright, so this is after they've understood it. Alright, this is after they understood it. So after they understood it, they changed it. They changed the intent. They tried to change the intended meaning. Oh no, it doesn't mean this, it means this. And they start to come with these ta'wilat al-fasida. مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا أَقَلُوهُ وَهُمْ يَعْلَمُونَ. And they know. They have knowledge. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them knowledge, but they chose to change it because of their desires. But the shahid here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned about His revelation, kalam Allah. The book that was sent down to them as being the kalam Allah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also said in the Quran, He said, قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ إِنِّي رَسُولُ اللَّهِ إِلَيْكُمْ جَمِيعًا الَّذِي لَهُ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُوَ يُحْيِي وَيُمِيتُ فآمنوا بالله ورسوله النبي الأمي الذي يؤمن بالله وكلماته. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ. So He's telling the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to tell all of the people, oh you people, إِنِّي رَسُولُ اللَّهِ إِلَيْكُمْ جَمِيعًا. I'm a messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to all of you. جَمِيعًا. This is to all the people. الَّذِي لَهُ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. The one that has He controls all the dominions of everything within the heavens and earth, all belong to Him. La ilaha illahu, and none has the right to be worshipped except for Him. Yuhyi wa yumit, He brings to life and He causes to die. فَآمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. So believe in Allah and His messenger. An-Nabi, the Prophet. Al-Ummi, the one who is illiterate, the one who cannot read. الَّذِي يُؤْمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَكَلِمَاتِهِ, the one that believes in Allah and His word, and His words, kalimatihi. So, I mean, it's very, very clear that the kalam, that the Quran, is the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He speaks whenever He will and whenever He wishes to speak. Mata sha, idha sha. Idha sha, mata sha, idha sha. So whenever He wishes and when He wishes and whenever He wishes. He speaks. And with the kalam alladhi yaliku bi jalalihi, with speech that is suitable to His greatness and His glory and His splendor, however you want to put that in the English language. Alright, so it's suitable with the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's, and with no deficiencies whatsoever. And that's why we say subhana, which we're going to get to in a minute, inshallah. With the meaning of a tasbih, inshallah. So back to this. So he said, وَكُلُّ غَيْرَ مَخْلُوقٍ كَلَامُ مَلِيكِنَا. So as we said, that anybody that says that the Quran is not, that it is makhluk, that the speech of Allah that is makhluk, it's not a sifa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is makhluk, then this person is a kafir. So Imam al-Lalaka'i, rahimahullah, he brought these different narrations, where he said, أخبرنا محمد ابن عمر ابن محمد ابن حميد قال أخبرنا محمد ابن مخلد قال حدثنا إسحاق يعني ابن إبراهيم قال سمعت أحمد بن حنبل وسئل عمن يقول القرآن مخلوق فقال كافر زاد ابن منيع وفتح الكاف. Alright, he said kafir. So su'ila, he said the Imam Ahmad was asked about who, the person who says that the Quran is makhluk, فقال kafir. Alright, that he's disbelieved, kafir, mukhraj min al-millah, that he's left the deen. That anybody that says this is not even considered from the 73 sects of Islam. He said, أخبرنا علي بن محمد بن إبراهيم الجوهري قال حدثنا القاسم الحسن بن محمد بن إدريس قال حدثنا الحسن بن أيوب قال سألت أحمد بن حنبل ما تقول في القرآن قال كلام الله غير مخلوق قال قلت ما تقول في من قال مخلوق قال كافر قلت فبما أكفرته قال بآيات من كتاب الله عز وجل ولن اتبعت أهواءهم بعد الذي جاءك من العلم ومن بعد ما جاءك من العلم فالقرآن علم الله فمن زعم أن علم الله مخلوق فقال كفر. So in this narration, which is narrated by Al-Hasan ibn Ayyub rahimahullah, he said that I asked Ahmad ibn Hanbal ما تقول في القرآن, what do you say about the Quran? And he said كلام الله غير مخلوق. He said it's the speech of Allah and it's not مخلوق, it's not created. قال قلت ما تقول في من قال مخلوق, and what do you say about the person who says that it's مخلوق? قال كافر. He said he's a disbeliever. قال بما أكفرته, and what did you make the takfir on him? Like what did you under what evidence do you take the person out of Islam? قال بآيات من كتاب الله. He said from a verse from the Quran. And he said وَلَنْ اتَّبَعْتَ أَهْوَاءَهُم, and if you were to follow their desires بعد الذي جاءك من العلم, after what has come to you from the knowledge. And then he said من بعد ما جاءك من العلم, he said after what's come to you from knowledge, فالقرآن علم الله. And he said that the Quran is the knowledge of Allah. فَمَنْ زَعْمَ أَنَّ عِلْمَ اللَّهِ مَخْلُوقٌ فَقَالْ كَفَرٌ. And whoever says that the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is makhluk, then he is disbelieved. He's disbelieved. And you also find a similar statement from the Shaykh of Imam Ahmad, which is Ali ibn Madini, rahimahullah, in which is reported from, it said, قال لنا أبو أحمد عبيد الله بن محمد بن أحمد الفقيه وجدت في كتاب عبيد الله بن أحمد بن كامل النحوي قال حدثنا أبو عبد الله محمد بن مخلد بن حفص العطار قال سمعت محمد بن عثمان بن أبي شيبة يقول سمعت علي بن المديني قبل أن يموت بشهرين يقول القرآن كلام الله غير مخلوق ومن قال مخلوق فهو كافر. So this is a statement of Ali ibn Madini rahimahullah, in which Uthman ibn Abi Shabiba, Afwan, Uthman ibn I got him confused with one of the narrators along with time. Uthman ibn Abi Shabiba said that I heard Ali ibn Madini قبل أن يموت بشهرين, 2 months before he died, and he said Al-Quran kalamullah. He said that the Quran is the speech of Allah, غير مخلوق, and it's not created. ومن قال مخلوق, and whoever says that it's makhluk is created, فهو كافر, then he's disbelieved. Alright, so this is something that takes the person completely out of the deen by saying this. And so that's why the Jahmiyyah, once the ulama started making takfir of them, then they just started saying that the Quran is the kalam Allah, it's the speech of Allah, but under their understanding of what the speech of Allah is, that is makhluk. So they dropped the whole makhluk thing, and then this is why the people started making the people say, if to clarify the whole issue, when you said what you believed in, that the Quran is the speech of Allah and it's not makhluk, and this is why they started making the people say that, just to clarify who's upon what, so Allah musta'an. So that's what he means when he says وَقُلْ غَيْرَ مَخْلُوقٍ كَلَامُ مَلِكِنَا. Alright, so where he said كَلَامُ مَلِكِنَا, alright, it comes from the word, it comes from the verb malik, malaka yamliku, alright, which we have in 3 different forms that's used, malik, malik, and malik. Alright, and all of them have very, very similar meanings. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the possessor and the controller of all things. That everything is his mulk. So just like and they generally translate it as king, because the king has a dominion, but obviously it's it's everything is the dominion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because everybody, even us, we're slaves of Allah. We all belong to Allah. Everything that we have, our money, our wealth, everything, even though we say that this is my money, these are my possessions, but in reality they're not. Everything it belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and everything is given to us as a masuliyah. It's a responsibility, and we have to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with everything that we have. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the possessor of all things. بِذَلِكَ دَانَ الْأَتْقِيَاءُ. And he said, and with this, Dana. Dana, it comes from Dana Yadino, as we spoke about before, when we went over the second line where the poet said, وَدِن بِكِتَابِ اللَّهِ وَالسُّنَنِ الَّتِي. وَدِن is a fi'l amr of Dana Yadino, which is deen, which means to take this as a deen, take this as your way of life, as your religion, as he said, بِذَلِكَ دَانَ الْأَتْقِيَاءُ. Al-Atqiya, of course, it goes back to the people who have taqwa, and these are the people that obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His commands, and they stay away from His prohibitions. بِذَلِكَ دَانَ الْأَتْقِيَاءُ وَأَفْصَحُوا. وَأَفْصَحُوا, and they made it very clear. Alright, because fasaha is when a person speaks in a very clear, and he articulates himself in a very clear, concise manner so everybody can understand. And also for the person, you will say that he's fasih. Fasih, that he speaks with fasaha. يعني هو يفصح في أقواله وفي كلامه. So this type of fasaha is that he speaks in a very, very clear, concise manner. And it's very clear what he means when he talks. Alright, so you can, like a similar word, close word in the English language would be like he very articulate. He's very articulate. So it's not like baligh and balagha where the person speaks with this type of, extravagant type of language, like the Shakespearean type, using words that people don't understand. No, the fasaha, that he speaks in a way that everybody, whoever he's speaking to, they can understand him. And they understand exactly what his intended speech is. So in the next line he said, وَلَا تَكُوا فِي الْقُرْآنِ بِالْوَقْفِ قَائِلًا كَمَا قَالَ أَتْبَاعٌ لِجَهْمٍ وَأَشْجَهُ. وَلَا تَكُوا فِي الْقُرْآنِ. وَلَا تَكُوا here was وَلَا تَكُن. Alright, and it's, this they dropped the noon in the poetry because to keep the meter of the poem intact. Because here the la is nahiya. وَلَا تَكُن. Okay, so it should be majzum bin nun, but they dropped the noon. وَلَا تَكُوا فِي الْقُرْآنِ بِالْوَقْفِ قَائِلًا. And so don't be like, he said, كَمَا قَالَ أَتْبَاعُ لِجَهْمٍ وَأَشْجَهُ. So like the followers of Jahm, when they started getting all the heat, and then they started saying, they would just say the Quran kalamullah wa yaqaf. And this is what he said bil waqfi, that they would say that the Quran is a kalamullah wa yaqaf. They said la. He said ولا تكون في القرآن بالوقف قائلا. He said no, you say al-Quran kalamullahi غير مخلوق. He said that when you speak and you say that the Quran is a speech of Allah and it's not created. This way that you clarify to the people exactly what your aqidah is. Because the followers of Jahm ibn Safwan, this is what they started to do when the heat started getting on to, like when the ulama started making takfir of them, they started to, they would stop. And that's what al-waqf bil-waqfi is, that they would stop at that basically that the Quran is a speech of Allah. And that's it. But of course in their belief, the speech of Allah is what? It's created. So in this case, they still have the same beliefs. They're just not saying it the way that they used to say it. So anybody that would say that the Quran is the speech of Allah in those days, they would say that he's Jahmi. If he said that the speech is the speech of Allah and is created, then they would call him a kafir. They take him out of the deen because that's kufr sarih. Khalas. I mean, they would, that person would not even, but then the followers, they would say this and they would stop at that point. So then they would say he's a Jahmi. And even though the firqa, this group that broke off, is called as Jahmiyyah because of Jahm ibn Safwan, it's not actually, he himself is a student of Ja'd ibn Dirham. So he took all of this from Ja'd ibn Dirham. And then of course the Ja'd ibn Dirham, he is not the teacher. He wasn't the originator. He was also a student. And he took his dalala from Aban ibn Sam'an al-Yahudi. So here we go. Like, you look back at the chain of narration, and it goes back to al-Yahudi. Just like Abdullah ibn Saba with the Rafidah, you see at the end of the chain, you see the same, thing. Allah musta'an. And this is a saying that Arabs have from way, way, way back. Or he always used to say, "Ma ashbaha laylata bil bariha." Ma ashbaha layla bil bariha. So, like, how similar tonight is from last night. I mean, because it's the same thing. We keep seeing the same repetition. You saw it with the Christians and what happened to them, and who was responsible for changing, their deen. And then of course, but alhamdulillah, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has protected this deen. So as much as they want to try to change it, but they're always going to be a ta'ifatun mansura. There's always going to be a ta'ifa qa'ima ala amrillahi. La yadurruhum man khadalahum wa la man khalafahum. So this ta'ifa, this small group of people will always remain until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes the last souls of the last believers. And this is after the killing of a Dajjal. So Allahumma musta'an. So I mean, there's always going to be a ta'ifa in this ummah. It's always going to be standing up, doing the thing, carrying out the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and staying away from His prohibitions and calling the people to the correct understanding of the deen. But here we see like what? Jaham ibn Safwan, he takes from Ja'ad ibn Dirham, who takes from Aban ibn Sam'an, which is a Yahudi, al-Yahudi. And of course, just similar to his teacher, Jaham ibn Safwan was killed. He was held captive in some fighting, and tried to use his influence, but that didn't help him too much. So Allahumma musta'an, and he ended up being killed, just like his teacher before him. So Allahumma musta'an. Well, alayhi min Allahi ma yastahiq, because he's definitely, no doubt, Allahumma musta'an, the reason for a lot of spreading of a lot of fitnah and chaos in the ummah. And and he's probably considered one of the grandfathers of the people of Kalam, of the philosophers of this ummah. So if you trace it back, you're going to trace it back to him and his teachers. So Allahumma musta'an. Wa alayhi min Allahi ma yastahiq. And the last part of this bait, where he said, Kama qala atba'un jahmin wa asjahu. Asjaha means asjaha yushtihu asjahan asahala wa warafaqa. Asahala wa warafaqa. So they changed their tone up, and they started getting lax, and like a little bit of lax with what they were saying, because obviously the teacher of their leader got killed. Then their teacher got killed. So along with time. So then they started, and with the ulama make a takfir of them. So then this put the pressure on them to kind of like hold back on some of their speech, out of fear of it becoming known that this is their belief, and then they would also be tried and executed. And if you go back and look at what they were executed for, is for the spreading of zandaqa, which is zandaqa is like this complete ilhad, just complete atrocious beliefs, complete misguided beliefs, and this is what they were being held for, and this is what they were being executed for, because they were called in the kufr and dalalah. So Allah musta'an. So you see now that the philosophers nowadays, Allah musta'an. I mean, you still see the children of Jaham ibn Safwan. They still roam the earth today. Allah musta'an. They still roam the earth, although it's a lot more watered down than it was in the time. And then that's what happened. Like you see with the Jahmiyyah, when they first started off, they had and this is why they call them a Jahmiyyat al-Ghaliyah or al-Ghulat. That they were like the extreme ones. And then of course you had like little layers of them where they kind of like watered it down more, and then you got like, for example, the Mu'tazila, and then you get the Ash'ariyah, then you get the Maturidiyah. All of this broke off from the same fiqh. All of them broke off from the same fiqh, but they just kind of watered it down more and made it less and less, because obviously the original beliefs, the original beliefs that they had when they started off, completely negating all of the character, all of the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and saying that the Quran is makhluq, and all the other foolishness that they used to say. It took them straight out of the deen. But then the other people came and they started coming with this type of ta'wil, and the ta'wil is the thing that kept them from going out of the deen. So you see, like the Mu'tazila, they do almost the same thing, but they do ithbat to some of the sifat, but then they negate the rest. And then Ash'ariyah come and just do ithbat of a few more sifat and negate all the rest. But in reality, they're all building off of the same fiqh. They're all going from the same thing. So their whole madhab, if you look at all of these individuals, the Mu'tazila, the Ash'ariyah, the Maturidiyah, and all the people that have these beliefs, they're all building off of the same madhab, which is a madhab that was built on dalal. It wasn't a madhab of the Salaf. This is not like they cannot go back and trace this back to the Salaf. So the Ahlul Hadith, the people of Hadith at the time, made takfir of Jaham ibn Safwan and his followers. Anybody that said what he said. And in fact, it was the main thing that caused the fitnah of Bukhari. rahimahullah, because some people that were very jealous of Bukhari, and they wanted to cause fitnah between the ulama, specifically at that time. And the original fitnah started because the people they did like a tahrish with between him and Muhammad ibn Yahla Dahli, which is from the Kibar al-Muhaddithin, when al-Bukhari went to Naysabur. So, I mean, and they were asking him about, the issue, but the way that they phrased it, they said, what do you say about, like, when you recite the Quran? Like, when your voice, your recitation, he said, because he wrote a book, it's called Khalqu Af'al al-Ibad, which it means, that all of the actions of the creation are created. Obviously, because they're creation. So anything that they do is creation. And of course, this comes from the Quran. You see this in the Surah Al-Safat, in the story of Ibrahim, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَاللَّهُ خَلَقَكُمْ وَمَا تَعْمَلُونَ. وَاللَّهُ خَلَقَكُمْ وَمَا تَعْمَلُونَ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created you and the actions that you do. So everything that you do is a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's what he was saying. But they twisted it and said that no, he's saying that, the Quran is like lafzi bil Quran makhluq, and then and twisting it and making it sound like he's from the Jahmiyyah, and then this caused a fitna in Naysabur, where he eventually had to leave, and the only two people stood in his defense. Everybody started to turn against him, but it was all because of a bunch of hussad, some jealous people that are just trying to cause this type of tahrish between the ulama, and that's why we have to always be very, very careful and go back into and do a tathabbut whenever these types of akhbar come to us, where people are trying to cause this type of dissension amongst the ulama, and not just amongst the ulama, but even amongst the du'at and the people of khair, the people that are calling to the sunnah, that we always have to go back and do this type of tathabbut, because you see the type of fitna that it causes. Allahumma musta'an. I mean, it doesn't cause Imam al-Bukhari any harm. It did him nothing but good in this dunya and dunya and in the akhirah. So it's not like it's going to do him any, but it did him harm at that time. That's difficult when you're going and you're trying to teach the truth. You're trying to call the people to the truth, and now everybody turns against you because of because here people misquote you or take something that you said out. Because they were asking him to get him to say something that they could use against him. Allahumma musta'an. And that's what people do. You see this all the time. Like people they come in and they start asking questions, but they're not looking for the truth. They're only asking the question because they want to see your response. They want to see how you're going to answer it, so they can try to get something to use against you. And that's what people, unfortunately, we have a bunch of people to do that. And, Allah musta'an, we get questions like that all the time. All the time. And generally, once I see that that's what the person's doing, I just block them. Because, it becomes apparent that this is what the person's doing. Once you answer a question, he asks you a follow-up question, then he asks you a follow-up question. But every time that he asks you a follow-up question, it becomes more and more detailed. Then you know what the person's trying to do. And these people, they're just trying to cause problems. They're just trying to try to find anything that they can use against you, because these people, they're not looking for good. They're looking for drama, and they're looking for things to use against people. And just like what you saw with the fitna that happened between, Dahli and Bukhari, Allahumma musta'an. Allah ya'fu anhuma wa ilahuna subhanaka wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant astaghfiruka wa atubu